Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer podcast. Yeah, dude, you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Dude, I've been looking forward to this for a minute. So because you're somebody that is, how do I word this? Like, you're entertaining as hell. Just simple. I'll keep it simple. You're entertaining as hell on Twitter. So every time I see you tweeting out something, there's always something spicy there. And so I've been looking forward to actually getting to know you and having you on the couch and having you on the podcast. So, dude, I appreciate you making time and coming out here.
Fuck it. I flew out here just for you, buddy.
Hey, man, I appreciate it.
All the way across the country.
There we go. So for people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief intro to yourself?
Yeah. Been in the space since, 18. Prior to that, had some successes in the business world, mostly real estate area. Was in manufacturing in my early 20s. I think you and I had talked previously. Like, I lived in Mexico for 5 years, from 20 to 25 years old. Kind of where I grew up. I was one of those kids that went to play, basketball on a college scholarship, was talented, was smart, but just had no fucking drive or idea of what I wanted to do. And luckily my family was in manufacturing at the time. And I was like, you know what? I just looked at my dad one day and I said, send me to Mexico. And so my mom, of course, was like, no. My dad said, let's do it. Right. So moved down there on my 20th birthday, spent 5 years there. I always say that's where I grew up. That's where I learned a culture, learned a language, grew a business acumen, managed 250 people on a daily basis for 5 years. It's kind of experience that you don't get in any other kind of scenario, whether it be college or, your first job, whatever it may be. So that's kind of where I grew up and then moved in 2005-ish, started doing sales at that point, was successful but hated it. Started my own business in 2007. Wife was pregnant at that time, newly married, pregnant, didn't have a pot to piss in really. And we were like, screw it, let's start a business, right? So we drew up the business plan and logo and name on the dining room table and worked grinded on it for 2 years. So did that for 2 years, didn't make any money. I think the first year we made $35,000. Second year made $52,000. I'm like, oh, I see potential here, right? It's a fucking 30% increase and still making no money. And kept at it. 7 years later, we started, probably 3-4 years later, we started making money. And I've still got that business today. So still got, over 100 employees. I branched out into other areas. But then I got into crypto, full-time in 18.
There we go. So what was your, how did you end up getting into crypto? How did all that come about?
So my brother, everybody's got this story, right? My brother told me, buy Bitcoin at 500. Of course I didn't. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. So I got into it at 18. I saw, it topped at 20 and 17, then dropped down to 6, I think, rebounded to 10. I shoved pretty hard around that 10 range. I think it dropped to 3. Luckily, Arthur shut off the machines and saved us. But yeah, that's how I got into it originally.
Okay. And then how did you end up getting into NFTs from there?
So I started trading. Actually it was funny because I called Deez and Sobe one day and I'm like, hey, I want you guys to come down to Florida, hang out with me, let's have a good time. And I want to learn about NFTs because they'd been flipping them for, well over a year now, especially Deez. And so they came to the house and we had drinks on the porch. We went out, hung out, learned about NFTs. I think at that point I bought a couple of Fidenzas. It was when the market was really, really popping, right? And I think I swept like that night. I swept like 18 punks in like the 30 ETH range. I'd never minted anything before, so I was just buying, like standing projects and what I thought were, blue chips. So that's how I originally got into it. I really didn't start minting stuff until much later.
And what was your original, like, I guess when you were with them and they were talking about NFTs, what was your original like bull thesis as to like why you thought these would do well?
Yeah, so I don't know that I've ever told this story publicly, but I was sitting in the Bahamas and I was telling some friends, it was right when Beeple was about to sell. And I was like, here's my thesis on why NFTs are going to do well and what I think of this going forward. Now, this is prior to the $69 million sale. I mean, obviously that was, maybe bolstered it. I don't know. But my son is big into Minecraft, is big into Roblox, that type of stuff, right? And so I'm constantly swiping this credit card, $20 here, $20 there, like nonstop, right? And I'm like, he's showing me, what are you doing? I'm buying skins, I'm doing this. And it's all about digital identity. And when I first got into it, I was looking at punks, right? I'm like, there's no utility here, but I'm seeing it's an online flex, right? People like watches, they like cars, they like, showing off money. And now all of a sudden you can kind of like do this online. Like there's really something here, especially when I'm looking at like my son coming up and then younger kids that spend so much more time online than I did, right? It's just not my world. I was more out doing things. But when I sit here and look, okay, my son and his age range and even much older, probably up to the, early 20s now, they spend so much time online, whether it was RuneScape or Roblox or Minecraft or whatever it may be. And I'm like, there's really something here with digital identity. And that was like the big first thing that hit me was it's just a fucking, like, it's such a flex, right? Yeah. Like if you have a $400,000 PFP, like that's like people know that, right? Immediately. And then you're somebody. You're somebody to, maybe not to the people that matter, but you're somebody to a bunch of people that don't matter. And there's something in that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it reminds me of when I moved out to LA in whatever that was, like 2016, when somebody had that blue check mark on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever. There was something about that where like it lended this credibility to that person, even though a lot of times it would be like, this dude who played minor league baseball for 2 years and somehow was verified on Instagram for that. And I was just kind of like, why is that person verified? But there was something about like when you got a follow from somebody with that blue check mark, right? And,
or even worse, the journalist.
Yeah, that too. And or same thing with like the people who were on like Forbes 30 under 30, right? And I was like, damn, there's such a flex about like being on Forbes 30 under 30. And then I started learning about how all this stuff happens, right? And it was like, oh, in LA, a lot of people pay $10K to get verified on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Oh, a lot of people pay to be on Forbes 30 under 30. And I was like, damn, okay, it's a bunch of bullshit, right? And so it was something that like, but there's still, the credibility was still there to the outside world who doesn't really know how like the behind the scenes works on all that, right?
Yeah.
But
with what you're saying there, there's, you can pay $10,000 for a check mark, but can you pay $400,000 for a PFP?
And that's what I'm saying. That's what to me makes it now even more, like makes the PFP that much more valuable, because now, especially with, hey, you don't even have to spend $10K to get verified. You can spend $10 and get verified on both Instagram and Twitter, right? Yeah. So in the last few months, that whole like business model has completely changed, right? And so that blue check mark now carries really no significance because anybody can get one, right? And that's the difference of PFPs is that there's never going to be just pay $10 and you're going to get a DGOD PFP or a CryptoPunk PFP or a BAYC. Like you're going to always have to pay top premium for those, right? And so that to me it lends the bull case even more for NFTs, is because now the original online flex, which was the blue check mark, is basically dead. And now the next big like online flex is going to be PFPs, and we still haven't seen like that become the norm yet. We saw blue check marks become the norm. We haven't seen that yet with PFPs, and I think that is going to be the next big thing.
I think we did for a while. Right?
Yeah.
Because when I first got into it and I'm looking at the punks, right? I'm like, Jay-Z rocks a fucking punk. Like that's the top of the ladder when it comes to culture, when it comes to money. Like that's a fucking flex. Now, it's similar to the blue check mark. Just because it's a bear market, we don't have to pay $400,000 for it. It's $100,000, right? Whatever it may be. But there's always going to be some kind of value there.
Yeah.
And then when I'm looking at my son buy these skins and things like that, and it's like, okay, I've got this online identity, but I want to change it up. Right? And so that's when I'm like, okay, NFTs really make sense, because not only do people want to rock a PFP that's identifiable, they also want the opportunity to change that up whenever they want to, because that's even more of a flex.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Like you've got multiple NFTs now, right? It's like driving a car. You were telling me the story earlier about your buddy and said he had multiple cars. It's like, hey, do you want to take the Ferrari? Do you want to take the Lambo? Do you want to take this? Right? It's a flex.
Yep.
Now, that's like scratching the surface, of what NFTs really are and what they're going to do and what they're about. But that's just what got me into it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something too where it's like, yeah, we're still, even though we've had people like Jay-Z and stuff like that who have rocked CryptoPunk and things like that, to me, we're still a ways away from like the true adoption, because I look at the true adoption of like when everybody looks at it and they know what it is, right? So like the blue check mark has gotten to that, right? When you say like the blue check mark, people know what you're talking about, right? When you mention like the Fortnite skins or whatever, these different games with skins, like people understand that too, right? We still haven't reached that completely yet with like the NFTs where somebody even from the outside world sees an NFT and recognizes what it is, right? And to me, what it's going to take for that to happen is one of these brands becoming far larger than just an NFT project. It's got to be a culture brand, right? And we talked a little bit about that before we started the podcast, but to me, we haven't really seen that completely yet. Like I think we're probably in the next like 2 to 3 years, we'll see an NFT project that actually becomes a worldwide brand. It becomes like the supreme of, the next supreme, right? And I think once that point happens, that's when we're really going to see like NFTs and everything like that, the PFPs that come along with it, reach their like true full market adoption. We'll see how that all plays out. But so for you, when you were looking into the NFT space, when did you start, like, I guess, forming your own opinion about different projects? Like at the beginning, you have your buddy talking to you about it. He's showing you different projects, kind of saying, hey, this one's kind of a blue chip. When did you start developing your own theses on projects?
I mean, pretty early on. Like I'm pretty outspoken. I've got very strong opinions, across the board, especially when I dive into projects, whether it be tokens, whether it be NFTs. Very early on, like I started picking my winners, right? And I still think, and I still say this today, like I think Punks is going to be a cultural icon, even much more bigger than Yuga itself or Bored Apes. I guess they're part of the Yuga ecosystem now, but like I think Punks is going to be iconic. I don't know what's going to happen to Bored Apes. I don't know what's going to happen to some of these other projects. But like you said, one is going to catch mainstream adoption, and then there's going to be some more that follow, right? Because they're going to follow either that path, on the decisions they made and the moves they made, or it's just going to be more normal that they introduce more people into Web3, which is a great thing for everybody, right? There's going to be something happens there. There's going to be a tipping point in the next 2 years.
Yeah. And that's why I'm not a big competition guy. Like I look at all this and I'm like, dude, I'm rooting for every project to succeed because we need more projects that are doing really, really well for this space to continue to grow, right? And so every time there's a project that reaches a certain floor price and then falls down, I'm like, that's not something to be excited about. It's not something to be like, oh, hey, told you that project was going to go to shit. It's like we need more projects to do really well and then sustain that success. Because in order for us to become, for PFPs, for NFTs in general, to not be looked at as like this kind of like, random ass thing that we're all doing, just buying JPEGs on the internet, we need to have projects that actually sustain success, because that's the only thing that's going to get people from the outside world to be like, okay, hey, I want to get involved with this. I want to learn more about it, right? So for you, when you were in the space and you're buying these NFT projects, you're learning about them and everything like that, then you started to come up with the idea for, and helping out with the pronunciation here, it's Kanpai Pandas, right?
Yep.
Okay. So where did the idea come from? Was there something where you're like, I'm looking at the space, there's this, kind of hole in the space and we want to fill it?
Okay. So this is kind of a funny story. So I had helped with the honoraries for at this point was called Yakuza Pandas. Okay. So I've got a lot of friends in the space, been here for a while. So I helped with a lot of the honoraries. The night of Mint, everybody was excited. Me and my buddy fly from Florida over to Mississippi. They had called me and said, hey, would you like to come? It was a casino. I said, would you like to come? And we're going to fly a plane over to Walk Sunday at Augusta. And I'm like, fuck, I've never done the Masters. Like, of course, it's a Saturday afternoon. Me and my buddy are there. We're like, hey, you want to fly over and go? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we're sitting there in the high limits at like, say, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And Mint starts, and we're both sitting there in the high limits with computers out. We're having cocktails, and contract breaks, shit breaks loose. I've never done a Mint before. I've never really spent any time in Discord before. And then at this time, it's like April of last year, right? April of 2022. So it's like rug after rug after rug after rug. So I go into the Discord, and it's like everybody's just like, rug, rug, rug. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I've never seen this before. Like, I'm not used to it. And so the team comes in, they're like, hey, like, we need help here. We need some kind of idea of what direction we need to go in, yada, yada, yada. So I give them like 3 or 4 options. And the 4th option is I'll just take it over. And I've had way too many drinks at this point. Should have probably not made that decision at that time, but it is what it is. And so I call my pilot and I say, hey, we're headed back. They agreed. So I'm like, hey, we're headed back to Florida, skip the Masters. It's like 3 a.m. now. I'm on the back porch drinking wine after, 9 hours at this point. And I pump out on Twitter. I said, hey, I'm going to take over this project. I'm going to save the day, right? Anybody want to help? And so Primo from Layer Zero hits me in the DMs within like 10 minutes. Hey, let's do this Omni-chain. Ghostly Ghost had like just launched as like the first Layer Zero Omni-chain project like a week before. And I'm like, yeah, great idea. So we do that. Layer Zero, was kind enough. They built out the contracts for us. We cut off the ETH. So we had like 2,000 ETH, and then we launched 6 other chains at the time, and then saved another, 1,000 at the end for Solana. And so it took 7 months for us to mint out. Apparently, it's very hard to drive people in a bear market to go mint shit on AVAX and Optimism and BSC and whatever else fucking chain. So, most projects, and you know this, if they don't mint out in 7 hours or 7 days, they're like done, right?
Yeah.
And so it took us 7 months to mint out, but we just grinded on it because once I attached my name to it, I said, I can't stop. Like, I'm too well known in the space. I've got too much character to drop the ball and just be like, oh, well, we fucked up, next time. Like, it's not me. I'll go down in a ball of flames or I'm going to make it successful. One of the two. That's the 2 options. And so, I chose one of the 2. And luckily, after 7 months, we finally minted out, and then things got going. But we were working and grinding this entire time. Like, I mean, it was like 3 months into the mint. And I said, we got to do something that says we're not a rug. We're here to stay. We're willing to, put our money where our mouth is. So I pulled out like $600K out of my own pocket. That's when we got the suite at Allegiant. So we get all the football games, all the concerts, all the events. I signed a 15-year lease on that deal. So either it's going to be a great deal for the Kanpai Pandas, and they're going to have a great spot to go and party for the next 15 years, or I'm going to be like the most hardcore Raiders fan you've ever fucking seen, and I don't like the Raiders. So, I mean, that's my 2 options, right? Because I'm locked into this deal. Threw a couple of parties like FTX Bahamas, Crypto Bahamas. We threw a party there and a couple other things, but I spent a lot of money out of my own pocket to make it work. And then to go a little further than that, to like show like how invested we were, like right before mint out happened, we were getting really, really close. I said, I want to grab 500, put them in the treasury, right? And lock them away for 2 years. Either it's going to be worth 0, and it was a stupid mistake because we could have taken the cash, or it's going to be worth a lot of money. And then we can decide at that time what we want to do with those 500. So we've made a lot of decisions, during that time. Oh, and I'll tell you another funny one is like Yakuza Pandas, right? That was the name of it. So the only reason that changed was when I had the initial call with Allegiant Stadium, right? And I'm on the phone with them, and they're like, hey, you owe us $400,000 if you want the suite, which is very hard to get, by the way. It's very difficult to get. Somebody just happened to break a lease and got out of it, and they called me immediately. And they were like, Yakuza Pandas? I'm on the phone. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't sound very good, does it? And he's like, no, not at all, And I'm like, fuck this. We got to change the name because you can't have a gang-affiliated
Oh, I didn't
project.
even know. Is that a gang affiliation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Yakuza is like the Japanese gang.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I know nothing about the Japanese
So,
gangs.
not good, right?
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
like the Bloods.
Yeah. Can't
Or the
have
Crips.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not a good thing. So I didn't even think about it really until that situation, and I was like, holy fuck. If we're going to build something, like we need to change this now and kind of get ahead of this. So we did. That's when we changed it to Kanpai Pandas.
And what is the name Kanpai?
So Kanpai is cheers in Japanese.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So when you've got like a Web 2 related brand where you're throwing parties and you've got suites and all this stuff, we're like, it just makes sense.
So why this project, I guess? Because like I think about the amount of like rugs I've been in, right? And I've thought about like I've never really, even in the projects that like I had invested a good amount of money minting, I had never really thought to myself like, you know what, I'm gonna derug this project, right? Like I'm gonna take it over, I'm gonna get involved with it, And I understand when I talked to Luca Netz from Pudgy Penguins, right, and he talked about why he decided to buy Pudgy Penguins. I understood it because it was like he's talking about the IP of it, and he was talking about how he felt like it wasn't headed in the direction that it could have gone, and he felt like it had this enormous potential, and so he bought it, right? For you, was it just, the fact that in the situation that you were in and the time that you're trying to mint it and everything like that, you were like, fuck, like I now have kind of like fallen in love with these pandas and I want to find a way to like turn this into a win? Or like, what was it that was like, this is the project that I'm going to take over and get involved with and I'm going to, take this project to the moon?
So for me, it just happened to be right time, right place, probably a little too high BAC. And I said, look, I can do this. And I wanted to do something within the space that was different anyway. And it just happened to be the right time. So I was like, I pulled the trigger, right? Now, would I have committed, as hard as I did, at that time, knowing what I know now? I don't know. That's probably a good question. Like if I would have known, it would have been a 7-month mint out and all this stuff in between and like spending money out of my own pocket and like working endless hours that I didn't need to work. I don't know that I would have redone it. So
yeah, it's a tough decision. I think people don't understand how much effort goes into being a project founder and all the different things that you have to do. So for you, outside of the 7-month mint out, what has been some of the bigger challenges that you've had to overcome in the last year or so?
So, I mean, we've had a really good game plan in place, from the beginning. It was kind of step one was, in real life utility, right? So essentially we made it a Web 2 access pass with, via Web 3, right? You buy this Web 3 access pass and you get access to suites and concerts and parties and football games and all this stuff. So that was like step one. Step two was like more the Web 3 side, which we delivered in March of this year. We spent about 6 months building that. And then it went on to like branding and apparel and all the other stuff to kind of like grow the brand outside of the space. I mean, the biggest hurdles that we always, have are probably like market conditions, right? Like we didn't get to enjoy a bull market like most of these projects that are still around did. There's very few that grew in the time frame that we did that are even here, right? And there's a lot of them that grew up in the bull that weren't here. So the biggest thing for us was just like market conditions and sentiment at all times, because it's hard to build a community if you don't have good sentiment. But luckily for us, like we spent those 7 months that we, could have been doing other things. We spent those 7 months like really engaging with the community and seeing what they wanted to do and what they wanted the project to be about and learning. I think there's still like, 40% of the project that has never been moved since mint, which is insane to me considering, the numbers it's pulled. But that just goes to say, like, I think we made a lot of the right moves. I can't point to a certain thing right now and say we made a bad move here. Now, we probably made a few little hiccups, but we adjusted pretty quickly and moved into the right move. So right now, the biggest thing is sentiment, right? Like when you're born in when you're born in a bear market and you're building, it's hard to get the eyeballs that you get in a bull market, because in a bull market, there's 10 times as many, 20 times, 50 times as many people engaged. In a bear market, it's not. It's the same, 50,000 people sloshing around in the same market.
So, okay, so when you talk about you talked a minute ago about the in real life utility, right? And so that's always been one of the bigger like subjects in this space is what is true utility, right? Because some people look at utility as like you're building out some sort of feature, your holders get access to that. Some people look at like the events as a big part of it, of like if you're a holder of this, you get access to this event, you get to go to this thing, whatever. The downside to events is that obviously not everybody can make it, right? So for somebody who's not a holder, or actually, and let's use Allegiant Stadium as an example. Like, what was that like in the last year? What was that like for holders of the project? Like, were they a big fan of it? What about the people who couldn't go? What's your like whole thought process on the in real life events and like the that some people can't go to realistically?
Yeah, I mean that always becomes a hindrance, right? I mean, if you're for many reasons, whether it's geographical or timing or whatever it may be, or just not interest. A lot of people aren't interested in football or concerts or whatever. So we found that out very early, right? It's like, okay, we're a few months into this. We're not even minted out. We need to build something that stands alone on the Web3 side. And that's what we started doing. So originally we started developing this centralized point system, and it was going to be like a way to distribute tickets, right? Because we didn't want people applying for tickets that didn't want the tickets. Right. So we wanted the people applying for the tickets that wanted the tickets. So we came up with this point system idea, and then it just grew and grew and grew from there. And so we spent the last 7 months building out. It's essentially like a Roblox model style. So you accrue points on a daily basis, right? You don't have to stake, none of that stuff. You accrue points based on the rarity of the panda. Then you go into what we call the PP Dex. You've got a marketplace where you can buy items. You've got a panda builder where you can dress up your panda, change the metadata. So we can release like certain items, whether it may be a shirt or a hat or a background, whatever it may be. So very much like the Roblox skins. And now you can personalize your panda on chain, right? So now you're spending these points, but we also built a system called dynamic rarity. And with that, the more things that you do to your panda in a certain way, and if you play the game right, you can move up the rankings and you earn more points. So it becomes a game within a game, and there's quite a bit involved in it. And then we also built out, the marketplace where you can purchase items and the raffles. So now we've got like probably 25 items running normally like in the raffle system. So you're accruing these panda points on a regular basis, and then you can cash them in for, a VIP ticket to like Rolling Loud Miami, or a pair of Roy Jones Jr. signed boxing gloves, or, this and this and this. And that's where it brings a lot of utility just from the Web3 side, because everybody's talked about this quite a bit, but nobody's really built it. And in the 7-month window that we said, hey, we got to build something for Web3 that's a standalone product, we built it. We launched it. It's also tied into, we built out a full casino, sports book, and poker room. So now all those points flow seamlessly between the others. So you can go in and gamble on sports. You can go in and play poker against your friends. We've got another game system launching where you can play like one-on-one games or multiplayer games, and you can wager all these points within each other, and it just becomes a fun, engaging ecosystem on the Web3 side that I haven't personally seen built before. And that's just like a secondary aspect of the project that we're building, right? So now you've got like this crazy Web2 utility, if you want to use it, but we've got this crazy Web3 side that's fun, engaging. You have to think about it a little bit. There's game theory involved. There's gambling involved. Like there's so many things that our target market are interested in, and we built that all out in 7 months. So I feel like what we've delivered in the first 12 months and being operational is pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Give everybody a little bit of something that kind of suits them, and with the overall idea of having fun in the space. So that makes sense to me. So now, when you guys have gone omni-chain, can you break down, I guess, like what is the supply per chain that you guys are on?
Yeah, so it's like 2,000 ETH. We've got Phantom, AVAX, Arbitrum, Optimism, BSC. I'm gonna miss somebody here. Somebody else. It was like say 1,200 on all the other chains. Okay. It was 2,000 on ETH, 1,200 on the other chains, and then 1,000 on Solana, which is going to be the last launch. So I think what people are confusing here is like we're launching this new collection on Solana. We're not. It's literally part of the original 10,000 collection. It was always meant for Solana. The only reason it wasn't launched earlier is because FTX happened. Right? When FTX happened, everybody started questioning things, which is totally understandable. I did, You can't say, okay, well, FTX just blew up and, they were major Solana holders and players and, do you really want to launch there right now? No, it's totally understandable. So it was always like the last final chain to complete the original collection. And the cool thing is with Omni-chain is like you can move wherever you want to, right? So I can say, okay, we can run a point multiplier within our point system. If everybody wants to move to, say we set a date for Solana of May 15th. If everybody moves there May 1st, like you get a point multiplier of 2.5, right? And we can encourage people to go to that chain. But my whole thing about being omni-chain is like, I don't want to encourage people to go here or here or here or here. Like decentralization is a cool thing because people get to do whatever the fuck they want to do. Like I want you guys to do what you want to do. So if Solana happens to be the spot where they're eating up the pandas and they love it, and the volume's great and the liquidity's good, et cetera, like then everybody go to Solana. But if there's another chain that's built next year and it's the NFT hotspot, go there, right? Versus trapping somebody in one spot.
So could somebody potentially, because you talked about like the different amounts for each chain, right? So Solana being 1,000 pandas, right? So could I potentially mint one on Solana and then move it to Ethereum?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way it started was, say you got 9,000 minted pandas right now, like most of them are already on Ethereum because They're trading, the liquidity's good, et cetera, et cetera. But if I wanted to, a week before the Solana mint, I could say, all right, we're going to do a point multiplier, and anybody that goes to Solana from Ethereum prior to will earn more points on a daily basis, and they can all move from Ethereum to Solana. And then when they're minted on Solana, they can move to Ethereum or to Solana or to Ethereum. Doesn't matter.
That's very cool. Yeah.
And it takes 30 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So how long and it took you guys that 7 months to build out the bridging process of all of that too?
No. So it took us 7 months to build out the Web3 side, which a lot of it was the point system, right? A lot of it was the math involved and figuring out like where the sinks and the faucets were, et cetera, et cetera. And then we got into this like changing the metadata and the Panda builder and then building out a casino and all this other stuff. So that took 7 months. Now, luckily, we just happen to be involved with, the best people in business when it comes to this stuff, and that's layer 0. So layer 0, as soon as they're done, like with the Solana bridge, then we're good to go. But we don't handle any of the super technical stuff on that side. We let layer 0, handle all that.
I'm a big fan of letting people who are great at something just do what they're great at.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. I've always been a big believer of Omni-chain is the future because I just don't think it makes sense to be like, I'm anytime I hear somebody say I'm a Solana maxi, I'm a Bitcoin maxi, I'm an Ethereum maxi, I'm like, at the end of the day, like the golden rule is that we should be able to just like switch from one to the other, and you really even shouldn't really even know what you're using, because at the end of the day, the average person is never going to care. No. So as much as like, you can care, it doesn't mean that the average person is going to. And I think that's something that like sometimes when you're not in the space, I feel like people often will be like, oh, well, the tech on this, the tech on that. And I'm like, dude, the average person in the world does not give a shit about how the tech works. They just care that it works, right? So they don't even need to know how it works. Like, I don't need to know how, if I'm watching a show on my phone and I use Apple TV to, pin it up to my TV, right? I don't need to know how the tech on that works. I just need it to work when I go to my TV. Like, I don't need to know how that tech works. I just need it to work, right? And so, I look at it the same way as the blockchain technology is like the technology is super, super interesting, but the easiest way that we're going to get mass adoption is by making it where people don't even really know what chain they're utilizing. It just makes their life better in some way. And when it makes your life better in some way, you're going to tell other people about it, right? So it's the same thing with like the pandas. If somebody's at one of these in real life events and they're having a great time about it, the panda becomes this, like you said, you're like access pass. But at that point, it's not even what the art looks like or anything like that. It's, hey, I'm having all this fun and all of it is tied back to this panda. Okay, cool. Well, then if somebody else is like, well, shit, I want to have that fun, I want to get involved with that. Cool. Then you need to get a panda to get that, right? And so it becomes where the true utility in that point is just having fun, and then people want to get involved with it because they're just enjoying themselves.
Yeah. And that's why we're building now a brand around it, right? Because we can't keep splashing around in this pool of, 50,000 active users, 20,000 active users. Maybe if we're on a good day, like 100,000 active users. We can't do that. Somebody's got to finally break out and say, look, we're going to bring in people into the space via whatever NFT mechanism, whatever it may be, right? Whether it's Luca with toys or us with, lifestyle, parties, apparel, that type of thing, or somebody else with something else. Somebody's got to do it. So when I look at something like this, I look at it much bigger than Web3, right? I mean, there's a lot of money to be made in Web3. There's no question about it. But if you can actually branch out a Web3 company into like the Web2 world to where it almost interacts in between the two and they don't even know it's a Web3 company or an NFT project, like that's where you win. That's where billions of dollars come into play. And so that's the market that I'm going after. I'm not here to make, $20 million. Like, I don't need it. I've got it. I'm not looking to do that with this project. This is my home run project, and I've got big aspirations for it. And so, that's why we took the apparel route of like, okay, well, we'll use this apparel. We've got a dope logo. We've got dope branding. People like it. Let's get it out in front of people, right? And so the more we've put it out there and put it in front of people, the more it's been adopted, right? And so then you can build your funnels with NFC chips or QR codes or whatever you want to down the road, and then drive them back to the NFTs themselves. But our main focus is like we sign, John Jones, right? So we're the official streetwear brand for John Jones, the GOAT of all time in UFC history, right? I don't even think that's even questioned.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. He talked to me in March, like before the fight, and he's like, hey, how do you want me to explain this project? And I'm like, don't. Just talk about the fucking apparel. We're your streetwear brand. That's it. That's all you need to know. That's all we need you to explain to people, because on a mass adoption level, you cannot shove NFTs down people's throats.
Right, 100%.
It's a fucking losing strategy 100% of the time, right? But what you can do is you can say, okay, we're building this dope apparel line, and people are ordering hoodies and hats and shirts and whatever it may be, and they're like, I rock this brand, right? Because this person does, this person does, this person does, and I just fuck with it. And then you can use that as kind of like a gateway of like funneling down that 0.05% of the people that would potentially be interested and like what's going on behind the scenes.
100%.
But if you can reach the masses, then you always know like there's going to be some type of conversion rate there at the bottom level. But it's very low. For NFTs, it's very low.
Yeah, and I think it's because, for the most part, you lose most people when you start bringing up the term NFTs, right? Because then you just get people that go, well, what does NFT really mean again? Oh, non-fungible token.
Nah.
Yeah, you lost them. Right then and there, you lost them, right? And so it's the whole thing of like, if you get somebody intrigued, just like you said, it's like you don't need John to explain it to people. What you need them to do is just see the apparel that he's rocking and everything like that, and then have them just go, I just want to get involved with that. And then there are going to be certain people who always want to know more and more and more, and those are the people that are going to funnel down to the NFT level, and that's fine. But the mass majority of people, one, can't even afford the NFT to begin with, and so you're really looking to just expand the brand enough and have then the people who do have the money and things like that, and who want to get involved to a deeper level, those people will take the time to dive into it, find out the NFT, get involved with it that way. But as long as the brand keeps expanding, what people think of when they think of Kanpai Pandas, as long as that keeps expanding, then the value of the NFT continues to gain value by more and more people finding out about it.
Yeah. When you're looking at an NFA, can't talk about price, but when you're looking at a collection of 10,000 membership passes that get you all this access and all these crazy parties with celebrities and fighters and private suites and things like that, 10,000 is not really that many when you're talking about a large scale, right? So now we're reaching hundreds and hundreds of millions of users, potential buyers, through apparel, through media, through other stuff. And then it becomes much more like eye-opening to say, okay, yeah, there's something really here at the bottom level, because what we've built is unique and cool, but we've also now built like this monstrosity on top of it that just filters people back at all times.
Can you talk about your ties? Because you mentioned the UFC a few times, you mentioned boxing a few times. Can you talk about your ties with like combat sports? Like where did all of that come from, and like how I guess are you like getting all of those people involved with Kanpai Pandas?
Yeah, so I've always just been a fan, personally. And then, as I started to grow the project and we started to kind of like come up with defining like certain roads that we wanted to go down, whether it be apparel or media or, whatever it may be, I started reaching out to people, right? I had people start to reach out to me, and that's when our first advisor, was probably like September last year. We weren't even minted out. And I got a call from a guy and he's like, hey, I love what you're doing. I've got connections with this person, this person, this person, this person. Big names. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Appreciate you. How the fuck did you get my number? That type of thing. And my wife was like, who's that? And I'm like, some crazy guy, honestly. And so like 2 weeks later, he calls me back. And we start talking again. And so this became my first advisor. He was a Panda holder. His name's Steve Espinosa. He ran digital media for Trump and Obama White Houses. So probably one of the top like digital media guys in the world, I would assume, if you're running two different White Houses. So he's one of our advisors. Steve Cohen is another advisor. Everybody talks about United Talent Agency. And I'm not going to name projects, but there's been a bunch of projects, and they're like, oh, now we're rep by United Talent Agency. It's a huge deal, and their community goes crazy. Well, Steve Cohen is a general partner at United Talent Agency. He's on my advisory board. He's a stakeholder in the company. He runs their entire Southeast division, like connected to everybody. Our other advisory team is First Round Management. They're based out of Miami, but they manage John. They manage a ton, like 200 between UFC, NFL, other fight leagues, other leagues. Like they manage 200 athletes. So that's another, big one. We've got another couple that haven't been announced yet. But my thing is like when you're building something like this, and that's why I chose all Web 2 advisors, right? Like I know Web 3, I've got plenty of connections in Web 3, but the Web 3 portion of like where this can go is very small in comparison to the Web 2 side, right? As far as just growth. So all of my advisors essentially have been Web 2 advisors. And these guys are all literally at the pinnacle of their businesses, right? They're all at the very top of like their industries. And for them to get involved with a NFT project in this time and day, considering all the backlash that everybody's gotten in NFTs, says a lot. Because they trust me, they trust the brand, they trust what I'm building, they trust, our vision enough to say, all right, we're going to be stakeholders in this. We're going to be public figures on the board. To me, that's a monster step forward just for the NFT space in general. Like, if we can get out there to these guys, to these powerhouses in different industries and say NFTs are legit, and then they can convince their customer base and clientele and et cetera, like it's a big step forward.
100%. What's your selling point to them when you're talking to these people? Because I would assume the majority of these people, are they already involved in NFTs, or are you having to so you're having to talk to them about NFTs, you're having to sell them on Kanpai Pandas to begin with?
Yes.
So what's your main selling point to them?
Yes. Main thing is my background carries a lot of weight with them, right? And I say, okay, I'm building in this space that has great potential because of X, Y, and Z. And here's my game plan and my vision of what I'm going to build down the road. And once they see that, they're pretty much instantly in. I mean, there's been a few that have more questions, but I'm like, you don't need to understand the mechanics of the NFT side. You don't need to understand any of this stuff. You need to understand how the NFT is used in this sense and what we're going to do with it. One of the best conversations I had was a blind video call with a guy that runs, I think he's built like 6 multi-billion-dollar IP brands. And he got in touch with, somebody put me in touch with him. We got on a call. I was sitting out by my pool, and he was at his office, and we got to talking. It ended up being like a 2-hour call. And he had no idea about NFTs, didn't know what the fuck it was. Said, oh, I think I saw, something about somebody getting sued over Bored Apes, right? After this 2-hour call, he was completely sold on like what we were building, what we were doing. He was texting me like ideas of what he had and this and that. We were going back and forth. He's coming on the board. I haven't announced this yet, but he just took over the marketing side for a $600 million in sales company a year to be the CMO for them. But he's coming on board. Didn't know what the fuck. He's older than I am. He's in his, I'm old, but he's in his, 50s, 60s. And after a 2-hour fucking conversation, he was like, holy shit, this is a game changer. We could do this, and this that I couldn't previously do in Web 2, which is interesting to me. That's the kind of stuff when I know I can sit down and convert somebody that doesn't know what the fucking NFT is to be like, holy shit, this has massive potential. That's when I know, okay, I've got something on my hands.
So what will you view then as a success like a year from now? Because obviously the last year has been a lot of like building out the tech side of things, getting it minted out, having it be Omni-chain and everything like that, bringing on these advisors and everything like that. So if we're sitting here a year from now on the couch having the same conversation, what will you view as a success?
So for me, it's always baby steps, right? Because I'm a very long-term guy. I don't build anything with a 6-month or 1-year focus. My thing is always like 2-3 years down the road because I've built real businesses before, and that shit doesn't happen overnight, right? Like people like to think it does. People like to talk about the one-offs, right? But it doesn't. You got to grind before you find some success, and then you got to run with that. And you learn a lot. You lose a lot of money in between, et cetera. So a year from now, I would say if we continue on this pace of like delivering on the schedule that we've delivered on, I'd be happy because we've been very, very fast-paced. Like my kind of motto for this year, I said, was like all gas, no brakes. Like finally when we got past this minting section and all the other shit that was involved, and I was just like, look, now it's time to like step on the gas pedal, all gas, no brakes. Let's get it on. Whether it be apparel, whether it be this, we've got a whole media company launching that I haven't even talked about. That's going to bring like a lot of eyeballs. So I would say a success in 1 year would be us delivering, 4 or 5 more products over the next 12 months. A success for me in 5 years is being the number one, like replacing Yuga, replacing whoever else is, if somebody else has passed Yuga, I don't give a shit. Like that's what I'm here for. This is my home run play. I didn't come here to fuck around.
I mean, hey, that's what I talked about when I talked about like your energy and when I see you on Twitter and stuff like that. Why I was excited to meet you is because I love when people have like true confidence in what they're building and what they're doing. And like, there's a lot of people in this space that I feel like kind of bullshit their confidence. And like, but there's something about when I was talking with you on the phone, and then just, you know, when I've seen you on Twitter and everything like that, I'm like, he really does believe what he's saying, and he has the utmost confidence in his ability and the team's ability and everything like that to fulfill these things. So, and I respect the hell out of that, because there's a lot of people that, once again, I think have that fake confidence where they'll kind of like say that publicly, and then privately you're like, you know, they don't really have that much confidence, right? But you have that same confidence whether you're privately talking, whether you're publicly talking, and I respect the hell out of that. And so, you know, how do you see in the near future, like, where do you see the, you know, in terms of like, are we going to see John Jones in a fight and he's going to have Kanpai Pandas on his shorts? Like, are we going to see, you know, what are we going to see where, you know, we kind of merge that whole Web 2 and Web 3 aspect of things? Is there going to be something along those lines of where the Kanpai brand continues to grow in a mainstream way like that?
Yeah. So you can't with the UFC.
Okay.
Reason being is because they've got to deal with Venom that I can't afford.
Fair.
Right?
Fair.
But like when John was fighting in March, he was wearing our stuff during Media Day. He was wearing our stuff at Culture Kings. He was wearing our stuff all around. And like the biggest thing to me, I guess kind of like going back a little bit, was like when I first talked to John, I was like, I don't want a deal. I want you to fuck with the brand. I don't want to sign you to a deal if you don't fuck with the brand, right? Because he can go get whoever he wants to at this point.
Yeah.
It's fucking champ. And he's like, no, I fuck with the brand. We talked for like 45 minutes. We talked about personal stuff. It was a great conversation. And so I'm like, all right, he does. And then we went to Vegas, and I brought a bunch of stuff with us. He was rocking it. All of his boys were coming up to my suite. They're grabbing stuff. They're calling me the next day, and they're like, hey, my boy's in town. Can I come get some more? And I'm like, yes. Because in my mind, that goes, these guys fuck with this stuff. They can literally walk into any store in Vegas, right? And pull something off the rack, and the owner's just going to say, take it. You know what I mean? But instead, they were coming up to our suite because they love the brand, they love what we were building, they love, you know, the look of it. So that's when I go, okay, we really got something. So, you know, 12 months from now, I'm already talking to several retailers, major streetwear brands, major retailers across globally, you know, that type of thing. That's what I want to see. I want to see, like, I just came in from Denver, right? So that was bare knuckle boxing. Bare knuckle boxing 5 years ago was so like taboo, right? But now it's starting to go mainstream. So we had Mike Perry rocking our stuff on his shorts. We had Ben Rothwell, you know, rocking it on his shorts. You know, he's faced off with Conor McGregor, you know, middle ring wearing Kanpai Pandas stuff. Like that type of stuff right there grows a brand, right? Because it gets eyeballs on it. So we'll continue to grow it through different athletes and different outlets and things like that. And then we'll hit retail, you know, we'll start to strike deals with certain people. One of my big things is using the, using the Web3 system that we built, you know, that involves like traits and things like that. And I hate this word, but I don't know another word for it, but fidgetals. Like, you know, I hate it. We need to come up with another word.
Fair. Yep.
Legitimately.
Yep. I'm with you.
Fucking hate it. So we need to come up with a new word. But fidgetals, right? Like, so you get a physical, you're buying the physical, but you're getting the NFT with it. But then you can also put it on your panda, right? So like, for example, this, right? Like that's a pretty nice pendant there. I can easily turn that kind of stuff into an item that now earns you X amount of points more on a daily basis for the panda. So now you can enter more raffles and get more like real stuff from those points. But also you can now rock in a sense on your panda, and it's also a flex, right? Because then now it's like, okay, well, now I can see that guy has this on his panda. That means he owns the actual physical. Then it's an online flex again.
100%. So, okay, so then from your end, when you're looking at merchandise, what's your like thought process on all of that? Because I feel like a lot of times merchandise in the space is all over the place, right? Yeah. Like you've got some where you look at it and I'm like, that looks like NFT merch, right? Like it's you know, it's somebody's putting something on a Gildan brand shirt and like it's scratchy material. It's not like anything high quality by any means, or the fit is super stupid, or like the, you know, it screams like this is like child's play, right? So what's your thought process on merch, and like what items do you think like are necessary? Do you think like where do you see the items going? Because I also feel like for the most part, we pick pretty basic items, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. We all rock, like I rock a hoodie, all the time. We rock t-shirts all the time, stuff like that. So I understand why those are kind of like customary items that we see on a regular basis.
Yep.
But then I also look at things like that and I'm like, okay, that pennant looks super dope. Like if I saw somebody rocking that, just somewhere in LA, I wouldn't think like, oh, that's NFT merch, right?
No.
So are there, like, where do you see your merch kind of expanding to? And what is your overall thought process if somebody talks to you and says, hey, here's this merch item I think we should do? What's your thought process on like how to decide if that's something you guys should do or not?
Yeah. So I'm very involved in this side, right? So I was in manufacturing for years. My wife happened to be a buyer for very high-end boutiques. So she went to LA, New York, Milan, and went to all the shows, met with all the companies, all the new up-and-coming stuff. Like she would buy some and put in boutiques. So I've got a very good, I guess, eye for that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm very basic in the sense of I'm a t-shirt and jeans guy, right? Like I'll rock a crazy diamond pendant or, diamond, studded, whatever. But at the same time, it's always about basics, man. That's what fucking sells is basics. Now you can add some one-offs when it comes to jackets or, you add a crazy bomber jacket in or a jumpsuit or whatever. You can do that kind of one-off stuff. But man, if you get away from the basics, you're fucked. It's hoodies, it's t-shirts, it's joggers, it's, shorts, it's that kind of stuff. That's what sells on a mass level. So you can't get away from that in a sense. And then you mix in some stuff that's like fun and custom outside of that. And then the fun and custom stuff that I do outside of that will be the stuff that we'll mix in that'll be like token gated for holders, right? Because the thing is, we don't want to token gate our merch because then you cut off the mass market, right? You're using this merch, this apparel. I hate the word merch. I keep saying it. You're using this apparel to reach this larger audience. So you don't want to token gate that.
Right.
What you want to token gate is like the one-offs, right? Like, oh, we do a custom jumpsuit that we design, like that type of stuff. Like I've got a guy here that's working on custom jumpsuits, and his name it's called Elevate. He makes all my custom suits, but he does like a lot of NFL players, things like that. We met up in Vegas during the John Jones fight, like the last night before I left, and I'm like, Percy, like I need something like really sick, and so he makes these like custom, really high-end tracksuits. But what I'll do is I'll take the tracksuit and I'll say, okay, we're going to run a limited supply on those of like 200 ever made, right? But you got to have a token to get in to buy that. And then now we turn it into an NFT as well. You can put it on your Panda. Like there's a lot of ways to build that without going too crazy.
So, okay, so when we talk about apparel there, obviously like the apparel play makes sense of like if we can get somebody who truly makes apparel that's like as sought after as like Supreme, then obviously like that project's going to do extremely well, right? We also have, I think, like the inside the Web3 world, if there was a project that really reached all aspects of the NFT space where people in the space were just like, whether I have that NFT or not, like I want to buy that apparel because it's just that cool, right? Like if somebody reaches that level, then I think they have the ability to once again like reach that mass adoption, right? But from your end of things, like how do you get people to build that like strong of a community where people really, really want to be a part of it, where even if they can't afford the actual Panda, they're like, hey, I want to buy the merch. How do you make something that sought after?
So we've had a ton of people come to us and say, hey, like I just bought a hoodie. I don't want anything to do with NFTs, but I bought the hoodie because I think it's dope. But like, I think the way you do that, you can't, it's so hard to do that from a grassroots perspective of like, doing IG ads and all this other stuff. Like you've got to put it on people that people look at. It's the only way. You can't, it would take way too long if you were going to do it completely grassroots with no celebrities, no athletes, nobody involved to build that brand. And I think you and I talked about this a little bit earlier. It's like Web 2 brands are way bigger than Web 3 brands, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so to be able to build that takes years, Luckily, if you take the right approach and you put the right money into it and you put it on the right people, then all of a sudden other people start to see it. And then it's like, okay, like one of the cool things that I noticed after we left Vegas was like somebody sent me a picture from David Njoku, the Browns tight end. Super great guy, fucking coolest guy, great style. He's the kind of like the embodiment of what you want in a like a streetwear brand. and he was hopping off a private jet in the rugged hoodie with the panda on the side.
Hey, there we go.
Right? And it's like, we didn't pay him for that. And that's where you go, okay, you got something here, right?
100%.
Like, you got something here. Because now people are like, I fuck with this.
So how do you plan on, or is there a plan on how to like onboard those people, right?
Oh, yeah. As far as like into the brand itself,
yeah.
of course. Yeah. Like I told you, I've got one of the best digital media guys on the planet on my advisory board and a stakeholder, right? So now he works on digital media plans, which involve Instagram ads, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, whatever it may be, YouTube, whatever it may be. That, and then you start to grow it from there, right? And you start to use those medias. You start to get the people seeing it more and more and more. You add more athletes, from our first round management side. Now you start to add more athletes. You start to see, okay, I mean, they can drill down to go, okay, this is how many women like it. This is how many men like it. This is kind of the brand. This is the look that they like, et cetera, et cetera. You start to tailor that. You start to tailor the ads. And then you drive, more traffic. So then you start to find out, like, who is your key audience? Who is your key buyer, right?
Well, and then what are your thoughts on art upgrades? And what I mean by that is, like, so I look at, like, if you look at, let's say Pokemon, for example, right? The Pokemon, the actual, like, characters have changed over the years, right? They don't look exactly the same as they did when I first started playing Pokemon, whatever that was, 20 years ago, right? When you look at Fortnite characters, they have grown. There's, like, evolutions of those characters, right? When you look at most TV shows, characters haven't there's always, like, a rebrand to keep things fresh, right? And so we've seen that a lot on Solana, where a lot of projects over time have been like, hey, you know what? We're going to upgrade our art in a way to keep it fresh, keep it unique, and everything like that. Obviously, I see that you guys are doing that with, like, the traits and everything like that being able to switch those out. But is there, like, have you ever thought about, like, actually upgrading the entire base character? Is that something that is at all in the plans? Or is that, what are your thoughts on, I guess, like, keeping the art fresh and upgrading as time goes on?
Yeah. So I'm a risk taker in general. Right before we launched all of our stuff at the end of March, in February, we redid the entire collection, all of the art. And what spurred it was like, I don't like this fucking art. We didn't draw it. We didn't do it. We took over a project. I wasn't crazy about it. And I said, here's the thing, is we've got this whole system coming out in a month or two. And we're going to have, like, new traits and all this stuff coming out. We're going to have great artists designing this stuff. It doesn't really jive with the old art, right? So I sat down with my art team and redid all of the art, every trait, slight modifications to all of the panda body bases, because I didn't want to get away from the original collection so early. So we just made slight modifications on all the bodies, and then we redid every single trait and just cleaned it up, sharpened it up, better color, better edges. You know what I mean? So I'm a very big risk taker when it comes to the art side, and I have no problem whatsoever with changing things down the road. Now, if we ever drop, like, a secondary collection, it will not be the same art. I don't like regurgitated art. It'll be something totally different. It'll be something, like, fun that we get to decide with the community. But yeah, I'm 100% behind, like, people that have the balls to upgrade the art, because that's a big deal. Oh, yeah. You've got all these community members that like this art, and you're going, well, too bad, because we're going to change it, right? Like, that's a big fucking decision. So I have no problem making those kind of decisions. I think it's a smart move on a lot of projects. I see a lot of projects that could use it and have said that they were going to do it in the past and haven't. And I'm just like, take the risk. Why not?
Yeah.
Like, this is an NFT, man. Like, have fun with it. People told us when we launched the PP Decks and the Panda Builder and all this stuff, they're like, oh, well, you shouldn't be changing the metadata, and you shouldn't be doing this, and you shouldn't have dynamic rarity, and you shouldn't, be able to change the look of the panda. Fuck that. Why? Let people customize it. Let people have fun with it. Why not?
Yeah, I very much believe in, when you're making decisions in this space, I feel like if the decision is something where the average person is kind of like, okay, like, that's not a decision you probably want to make. You either want people to absolutely despise it or absolutely love it, because that evokes emotion in some way, right?
Yeah.
And so if somebody absolutely despises the decision you made, yes, you still have to think about, like, okay, hey, do they have any merit to what they're saying, right? Like, if they absolutely despise it, why is that, right? And then when somebody absolutely loves it, same question, why do they absolutely love it, right? But I feel like when a lot of times projects kind of go, hey, we're just going to kind of play this, like, even keel and just keep it moving straight down the line, but, like, no one's going to hate it, no one's going to love it, they're just going to be kind of about it, right? to me, I'm like, you can't be afraid to make those decisions that somebody's going to go, I fucking hate that, because that is something that evokes, emotion. And once that also gets people talking about the project. Like, that's a good thing. You need people talking about it on the timeline, right? So if somebody hates what you're doing, they're going to talk about it on the timeline. If they love it, what you're doing, they're going to talk about it on the timeline. But if they're just kind of like, about it, they're never going to talk about it. And the moment they stop talking about it, floor price drops, the project it loses its hype and everything like that. So from your end of things, like, how do you maintain the hype on something, right? Because every day we see new projects minting. There's new meta about, why this project's doing well, why this other project is doing well. And hype is always something that's the hardest thing to try to maintain that love and support for a project. So on your end, like, what do you do to try to maintain the hype, maintain the love for Kanpai Pandas?
So my main thing is like communicating directly beforehand and then delivering. I'm not a hype guy. I'm not. Just, I can sit down in a podcast, I can sit in a space and I can hype people up, right? But I'm not a sit down and evoke emotion out of a tweet guy. I'm just like I spit truth, and if people like it, they like it, and if they don't, they don't. So that's probably where we struggle the biggest, to be honest, is like creating hype. But my thing is like, I'm not as concerned about the hype and driving the floor price right now as I am building an actual fucking business with a real product, with a real brand, with real partners, with real, tangible assets, with tangible value. That's like where I put my focus.
So when we talk about like real businesses, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that, and especially when it comes to these like IRL events, one of the things that I always worry about is like during a bull market, it's easy for projects to afford these events, right? Like they're making especially in 2021, projects were making a ton off royalties. They were making a ton off of literally everything, right? Floor prices were pumping, all of that. But now in a bear market, money's not as easy to come by as it was, a year or so ago, right? So, and these events can be very expensive. So what's your thought process on like how to make sure that you're able to continue to afford these events? Because obviously on your aspect of things, the fact that you put a lot of money into the business is great, but as any other business owner, you don't want to keep putting a ton of money into the business. At some point, you want that business to be sustainable and have something where it's, reoccurring, it's bringing in revenue every week, right? So for you guys, like how do you maintain to be able to do all these events and do all these cool things like buying the executive box suite at Allegiant Stadium? How do you afford to do all these things in a bear market?
100%. So if you look at it from our business model, the way I built it was we buy in bulk, essentially, right? So like the Raiders tickets, right? So we buy a suite that's very hard to obtain. You're not going to get very many of those tickets like in aftermarket sales. So we buy in bulk. We sell at raw cost, right? So it's just a no-loss situation for us, which is fine. I'm not trying to make money off the community on ticket sales. As long as I can cover my cost, I just move on to the next deal, right? Same thing with parties. Sponsorships, ticket sales, whatever it may be. If I can cover my cost on those items, then I'm golden, right? So that's what you got to focus on. And that's where, a lot of people fall short is they haven't been in that business before. And we've seen it over and over and over again of like, they don't buy a big enough venue and they don't token gate it properly and they don't do this and this and this. And it becomes a shit show. And then it's actually a net negative to throw a party.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
It is.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to do it right, and you have to have the avenues and the people in place that know how to do this and have done it before, or it's going to be complete and utter failure. I would say like BTC Miami, for example. I'll just give you this one. We're throwing the biggest party ever at BTC Miami. We rented an entire block for May 20th. We've got 2 venues. We got DJs in each venue. We've got a band in the street. We've got food, alcohol, all that stuff's for free. What I did was I chopped it with Karate Combat, who's one of our partners. So we chopped it down the middle. We said, okay, it's a brand recognition deal. It's about branding. It's about marketing. But then we'll find sponsors for this, and this. That'll cover 25, 30% of the cost. Rest you can make up, maybe on ticket sales. If not, it's not like a huge out-of-pocket expense. But you have to make sure it's not a huge out-of-pocket expense on every single event, because if not, you're screwed.
100%. And so what do you think is like from, how much do you pay attention, I guess, to what other projects are doing, and how much do you look at like, okay, hey, they're doing this. I don't agree with that. Here's why I wouldn't do that. Or, hey, I see what they're doing. I love that. That's a great idea. How much do you pay attention to what other projects are doing? And what do you think are some of the biggest, I guess, mistakes that you see other projects making that you've maybe learned in the last year? Like, yeah, I wouldn't be doing that.
Man, this is fucking loaded. You're trying to take me down this road. I don't pay attention to a lot of projects, to be honest. Thank you, brother. I pay attention like peripherally, right? I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing this, they're doing this. It gets thrown into group chat. I'll look at it. I don't go to their websites and kind of see. Here's why. I don't want to ever be in a situation where I guess I'm like copying what somebody else is doing. And also it like takes my mind off of like what my game plan is, because it's very acute. Like I have this to do, this to do, this to do. And I don't want to get caught up in like, oh, something that's popular just on crypto Twitter because somebody else did it. If I do that, you're going to be the second one that did it anyway. And you're going to waste a bunch of effort and money and time on being the second runner in whatever that decision was, even whether I thought it was cool or not, you know? So I don't pay a whole lot of attention. I do see some of the mistakes that people make, because that becomes much more vocal across my timeline, right? Like it's like any business, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a hotel, whatever. You get a good review, you get 10 bad reviews, right? Based on just the way people function, right? They're much more likely to complain complain than they are to give a compliment. Okay. So I do see that more frequently, just because it's more prevalent, right? Because more people are doing it. So when I see people fuck up a party, when I see people fuck up a drop, that kind of stuff, I pay a little more attention to it just to see what's going on. But I tend to tune out the noise a lot. Like I hop on Twitter, I do my thing, I shit post a little bit, I talk about the project a little bit, and then it's like straight back into the business mode of like, this is what we need to accomplish, this is what we've got on our plate for, you know, the next quarter, the next week, the next 2 days, whatever it may be. But I try to tune out that noise.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So
I'm not going to shit on a project on your show.
Yeah, no. And I never want people to do that. I always say, like, I'm not a fan of when I go on Twitter and I see a project founder, like, shitting on another project, because I'm like, dude, all that does is set you up to get dunked on in another way of, like, if your floor price drops at all, then there's going to be somebody who's looking to take an opportunity to dunk on you right back. And I'm like, that to me is never a good thing, because it's also the thing of, like, unlike, like, sports teams, right? If you, like, dunk on somebody's favorite sports team, at the end of the day, like, you know, they don't really have money involved with that. So it's kind of like playful in a way of just being like, if you were a huge, like, Warriors fan, right? And I'm a Lakers guy, you know, with living in LA. If you and I were dunking on each other back and forth, like, there's not really it's just kind of fun, right? But when you're saying, like, oh, hey, your NFT project is shit, you're saying that when they've put thousands of dollars into that NFT project, which doesn't make it playful anymore. Now they're angry, right? And it's a very different emotion that you elicit out of them in that moment, right? So I'm not a huge fan of that kind of stuff, because I just feel like it doesn't really ever lead to anything super positive, you know. For the most part, it just has people angry afterwards, and like that makes it where that person is that much more looking forward to your project not doing well. And I'm like, damn, like, I don't want to see that. Like, I want to see projects doing well. That's the whole goal, right? So I can disagree with the decision that a project is making all day, every day. But hey, I might be wrong. The thing that I might not think is the greatest idea might work out really well, or vice versa, right? And so I think it's something where I try to, like, pay attention to what everybody's doing, and I guess, like, in the back of my mind, give my thought and opinion, but not really vocalize that per se. Just kind of say, hey, here's how I think that'll play out. Let me see if I'm right or wrong, right? And that also kind of is, to me, almost like a barometer of, like, how in tune with the space am I? Like, do I, you know, when I see them make a decision, is my, you know, knowledge base in the space telling me, hey, I think that decision is going to go over really well, or, oh, I don't think it's going to go over super well, and then let me see how it plays out, and kind of, if I was wrong on it, you know, what was I missing? What clues was I missing that I was avoiding or overlooking at that time period? So I kind of use it as a way to, I guess, like, make sure I stay sharp in the space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think people need to call out, like, more projects, though.
with when someone's like a bad actor in the space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I think I would say I would leave that to the people who are, like, not project founders, I guess. Because that's the part where it's like, it can get so sticky where I'm like, I almost feel like, in a way, the, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, like, a good example, I guess. Like, almost if, like, two NFL owners were, like, going, you know, head to head with each other. I'm like, I don't really know if for the, like, community members, for the fans, like, is that a net positive? I don't know. Now, if, like, ESPN calls out, like, the Washington Commanders because their owner's, kind of a weirdo. Like if that's the case, like I would rather have that than like I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I don't want Martha Ford being like, hey, I'm calling out, the owner of the Commanders. It's like, yeah, I'd rather just have ESPN calling them out rather than like have, because then all of a sudden now you got powerful enemies, right? Like if all of a sudden the Commanders owner's like, well, hey, now I'm gonna start investigating into the Lions, I would be like, oh, hey, leave my team out of this, right? So I would just rather a third party be the one that like, I guess like, kind of slaps the hornet's nest if for lack of better terms,
Yeah.
But once again, that's the whole thing. It's like, it's hard to, because as like when you have strong opinions, it's hard to not vocalize those, right? And like, that's something that is it's a tough part of the space. It's like, how much do you vocalize? How much do you kind of keep to yourself? And how do you make sure it doesn't negatively affect your community?
Yeah. So I have to like reel back really hard on some of these because I've been in the space a lot longer than NFTs have, right? And I've been part of the community. I've raised tons of money. I've been a good like positive, in my opinion, a very net positive on the space, much prior to NFTs and much prior to my NFT project. So I feel like getting away from my roots, is a little bit difficult, especially because I can see this shit coming like a mile away. So I have to bite my tongue a lot, but I choose not to a lot of the times too, because I feel like we don't have a fucking ESPN.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no ESPN, right? So who am I relying on to call out this bullshit? Like community members, yeah, they do every once in a while, but a lot of them don't have the fucking voice to do it. You know what I mean? They don't have the following to do it. So at times I do choose to, call out certain projects. And I tend to call out the ones that are very blatant, in my mind. But yeah, I totally see what you're saying. But at the same time, you have to look at it from the perspective of like, if we're all in here for like a net positive, then there's got to be people that are bold enough and have the balls to fucking call this shit out because it needs to be called out.
Yeah, it really is. It's a tough situation because it's like we do need to remove the bullshit out of the space, right? Like every time we have something that like a project that rugs, or we have a project that has a super high floor price and then it goes to shit because of like bad decisions made by the founders of that project, like it's a bad thing for the space, right? So it's like, how do we make sure that these things we don't have more like black eyes in the industry, right? And like that's the part that I'm like trying to make sure of is like every time there's a project that like rugs or whatever, it's a huge black eye for the industry. It just makes us look bad.
Let me put it this way. Like when I'm trying to build a fucking business that's related to an NFT, right? And I'm dealing with top tier players, whether it be in apparel lines or other industries. And I'm saying, hey, take us seriously because of this, and this, and this is what I can do for you. And this is where we can grow together. And then I see people like Machi and fucking Alex Schillen Villain or whatever the fuck it is. Like I look at that as a major net negative to what I could potentially be doing. So at the same time, it's worth 5 minutes of my time to call out that bullshit.
Fair. Yeah. And that's where I think like, I'm a big fan of transparency. Like I'm a big fan of like, I guess, how do I word this? Like, it's the reason why I started the podcast. I wanted to give people the opportunity to speak and then let other people decide from there what they think of what they said, right? So I don't really ever give like my opinion too much on in terms of like, I think this person is a net negative for the space or net positive or whatever. I'm like, hey, let them talk, and then you decide from there what you think, right? And I'm a big fan of like these sort of open communication because there's something that like everybody learns something from these conversations, right? And like that to me is how we continue to grow the space, evolve it in a way, and whatever is to elevate more people as thought leaders in the space, continue to give people more and more of a platform, and then having higher quality media, like also something that we need to have too. Not a fan of like Zoom podcasts and stuff like that. It's just like it's not high quality enough. And when we talk about like the ESPN level quality, like we need that in the space in order to continue to grow it, right? And so that's the way I've always looked at it is like give people the opportunity to speak, let you then decide from there what you think of what they said, and take it from there. And and just continue to educate people by just asking the right questions and having people answer them, and then you decide from there what you think of that, right? So next I want to talk about you talked about a number of things that you have coming in the next 6 months or so. So what should holders be, I guess holders, prospective buyers, everything like that, what should they be excited about in the near future of Kanpai Pandas?
So I just think brand growth, right? I think that's the main focus right now, outside of like what we're building infrastructure wise. Like on our Web3 side, we're continuously updating stuff, right? Like whether it be part of the raffle system or whether it be the point system or the metadata, Panda Builder, we're always upgrading that stuff. So I don't even like put much emphasis on that. I probably should. Probably should be like, oh, look at this new upgrade, you know? But I'm not about like the new shiny toy. My focus right now is building the brand on a larger scale, right? So that's what people need to like look at and say, okay. And I've always told people this from the very, very, very beginning. Like you need one panda. You need one panda to be part of the ecosystem, to be part of this exclusive, you know, membership pass club where you have access to all this stuff. And I'm not a big proponent of like rolling out huge announcements. I'm more of a fan of like doing it behind the scenes and grinding and saying, now look at who's wearing this stuff, who's rocking this stuff, whether it's a brand endorsement deal or it's not a brand endorsement deal, right? Like that's where we need to focus. That's where we need to focus our growth is like outside of Web3, because again, I mean, we've beat this, but like it's a small pool and I can't do that. I cannot grow a large scale business in Web3. It's just not possible. I wish it was.
So when you talk about like traditional businesses, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, you're managing your employees and then you're managing your customers. But the customers, I guess you don't really always have, depending on the business, you don't really have always like face-to-face interaction with them, right? And with this space, it's a little bit different of like your holders, you have direct communication with all the time, and
Yes.
Twitter Spaces and Discord and everything like that. And so when you talk about like brand building and some of these bigger partnerships and things like that, the biggest thing is they take a lot of time, right? And so this space is an incredibly antsy space. We're always looking for something to be happening, right? So how do you make it where, how do you continue to grow that relationship with your holders where they give you the amount of time necessary to grow, and so that they don't just grow impatient and go, fuck it, I'm out of here? How do you manage that?
So that's difficult, right? But I am always involved in like Telegram chats, Discord chats, etc. I always love the feedback of what Web3 brings. I've been in all kinds of businesses, right, in Web2. And you don't get the type of feedback that you can in Web3, which is critical. Mm-hmm. Because in Web2, all you get, kind of what I relayed earlier, was like all you get is negative feedback and no positive, right? And so there's this huge difference in Web3 to where even if somebody has something negative to say, they come to you and they're like, hey, this is what I think, even though it's a negative take, and here's what I think could improve it, or leave it up to you, right? And to me, that is invaluable feedback. When you get feedback after the fact, like Web2, like whether it be a restaurant or whatever, like, oh, your food was shit. Well, okay. The service was shit. You can't change that, right? You can't change it. There's no going back. You can try to train them better or whatever, but a bad night is a bad night. There's no change in that. In Web3, it's like, oh, well, your service was shit, but here's what I think, could fix that. And I'm a part of the community and I want to see it fixed. And that's such a huge difference. And that's the power of Web3 versus Web2 is that right there. It's not the fact that, like, I guess I've talked about this before. Like, why does this need to be a Web3 project, right? And I look at it this way. There's been membership passes since the beginning of time, right? Whether it be a golf club membership or whatever. And if you have a golf club membership, you have this pass, and you pay $20,000 for the pass, and then you pay these ongoing monthly fees or whatever it may be, right? But then when it comes down to it, like, and you bounce, you can't sell this shit. It just goes back to the clubhouse, right? So now you've got this Web3 pass where you've got all this insane utility, and now you can sell it after. We don't own it. You own it, right? So that's like one of the cool things about Web3. That's like one of the things that says to me, like, that's why I need to be in Web3. But the second thing is like, I get all of this feedback for free. This shit would cost me a fortune in Web2 if I wanted this kind of candid feedback from community members, from people that had interest in the project, that kind of stuff. It would cost me a fortune. I'd have to hire companies, and they'd have to aggregate the content. They have to bring it to me, and it would take us a month to go over. In Web3, it's like, bam, 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 bam. This is why we think it's shit, and here's how we fix it. And that's fucking powerful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that feedback mechanism is actually probably one of the things that makes me the most bullish on NFTs, because we talk about...
Should be.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, when I was in high school, there was like this website, I can't remember what it was called, but where I would get paid to do like
reviews of websites where I would like go on there and they would have me like record my voice and they would record my like as I was on a website walking through, like they'd be like, okay, find this part of the website. And I would walk through how I was looking to do that, right? And I'd be like, okay, I would think it would be here, but it's not. So I'm looking in this area. And they were using obviously that feedback to make the website experience that much better, right? But they had to pay me to do that. And it was still like a clunky sort of way of going about things, right? This is something that is direct where, you know, you launch anything and people
All right, I'm going to stop you.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop you.
Yeah.
I'm old enough that people used to walk around the mall with a fucking sheet and they would drag you into a room for like $10 and people would do it and they'd put you in a test group. Right?
Yeah,
and they'd show you something and they'd get the feedback from the test group. And they did this manually all over the country throughout malls or whatever, shopping centers, whatever it may be, just to get that feedback. I get that feedback for free. That's huge.
And what has been the biggest feedback that you've gotten with Kanpai Pandas? Because I feel like, you know, obviously whenever you're doing anything in this space, there's going to be people that love the decisions you make. There's going to be people who don't love the decisions you make. What have been, I guess, some of the biggest like negative feedback that you guys have gotten in the last year? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I would say the biggest negative feedback probably was like, hey, we can't really grow that big just doing in real life events, right? And it was already something we were working on, but what we did when we built out the Web3 side, we laid out all the math, did all the work for like 3 months, and then we brought in a beta test group. So same thing, right? Except it's free. Thank you, beta test group. I should have given you $10 a piece like the mall did. But like, you know, we brought in a beta test group, 100 people, 100 heavy panda holders, and said, okay, this is what we've built. Break it. Tell us what you don't like about it. Tell us what you like about it, and fuck it up, right? And that's what we did. We spent another 3 months on that. So that was huge for me because they would say the UI on this sucks. The UX on this sucks. Like you should be able to do this, this, and this. And when you have a team of like, you know, for me, it's a team of like 6, right? It's a core team of 6. I've got other team members that aren't as actively involved. But a team of 6, like you can only do so much, especially when you're like so in depth into something. You start to lose focus, right? Like you start to like lose sight of things that may cause an issue in the future, right? But when you bring in fresh eyes, always, it just brings in a new perspective. So now you bring in 100 new fresh eyes, 100 new perspectives, right? And then you start to go, okay, yeah. We're like changing shit left and right, right? We're like calling the devs and going, hey, change this, nonstop for, 90 days. So that kind of stuff right there, the feedback, it's something that you can't match in any other business scenario.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the power of people who give a shit, right?
Yes.
Like, people care more about these NFTs than they care about, when they go and buy a sweatshirt at, J. Crew or whatever, Banana Republic or some shit like that. They don't actually care about it because it's a small investment into it and that's really it. And then they move on from it, right? This is something where people are actively spending time every single day in Discord, on Twitter. And so that passionate community allows you to truly like grow things in a way that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, because now all of a sudden you've got all these people who really do care. They're offering their opinion every day. You're able to learn from that every day and apply that from there, because the space changes so quickly too. Like that feedback becomes so important to see how the space is changing, how it's evolving, and to determine like, hey, is this something that we should continue doing, or should we pivot from here? And like with any business, the way that you pivot really determines how successful you end up, not really the original idea. It's like when you watch Shark Tank, it's like they're not really investing into that actual company. They're investing into those founders to determine how do you pivot to make this into a successful business, not just where's the original idea.
Correct. And like, I guess a little anecdote is like, I own restaurants, okay? I own like 7 restaurants with a restaurant group. But when I go to other restaurants, right, and I have bad service or bad food or whatever it is, I don't fucking complain about it unless it's like blatant.
Yeah.
I don't complain about it. I just sign my check and I don't go back.
Right. 100%.
Right? But that's like normal business practice. I don't care. My job is not to make your restaurant better. My job is not to improve your service. My job is not to improve your food. My job is to eat there. That's it.
Yep.
But in Web3, it's totally different. It's like, hey, we're a part of this restaurant group. And if the food's bad, we're going to fucking tell you. And if the service is bad, we're going to tell you. And if the waitress or the host or whoever, the manager was an asshole, we're going to tell you. And that's the kind of feedback that's invaluable.
100%. And if those restaurants had a membership pass that gave them some sort of service,
totally different,
then they would want to give their opinion because now they feel invested into it, right? Of course. So yeah, it's why I'm so bullish on NFTs is because like stuff like that makes so much more sense, and we're gonna find more and more use cases like that really do have true utility at that point. That is going to actually like make this space make sense to a lot more people than it does right now with just PFPs and PFPs alone.
I keep saying we're scratching the surface with where we're at right now. Scratching the surface. Whether it be a membership pass, whether it be an art pass, whether it be just the art, whether it be some other utility, doesn't matter. We are just now scratching the surface of what's going to be done. I just hope that I can lead in some way that process. Hope that I can push forward the industry so that people say, you know what, this is actually fucking legit. It's actually legit, and I don't have a problem tying my name to it if I'm some kind of outward figure, whether it be a celebrity or whoever. I don't mind tying my name to this because it's not going to reflect poorly on me. If I can do that, it's a huge step for me. It's a huge step for the industry. It's a huge step for me. It's a huge step for, the Kanpai Pandas, but it's a huge step for everybody else.
100%.
Not just us, for everybody else.
100%. So last few questions. So in terms of the expansion into Solana, how's that going to work? How does somebody mint one? Or is it only holders? How's all that working?
Yeah. So we have 250 mint passes that are live on OpenSea and Magic Eden that you can buy. And the way we did this was we had, the 7 chains. So our community early on said, okay, well, if you own one of each chain, it's an infinity chain or an infinity collection, like the Infinity Stones. Infinity Stones. So I was like, all right, that's like a cool kind of take on it, right? So when we finally minted out the 8,000 collection on 7 chains, I'm like, let's give back to them, right? So we did an airdrop. So we airdropped a separate collection called the Infinity Collection. And I was like, I called my buddy, Dr. Fresh, EDM DJ. Yeah. And I'm like, yo, make me a fucking dope track. And here's the visuals for it. We created this like MP4, this sick track, and it's got the pandas in it. But it's a really cool collection. It's very unique. And so we said, okay, let's airdrop this for free. And it comes with a whitelist. So the first 250 that completed the Infinity Collection got the airdrop and the whitelist airdrop for $400 USDC, which was the original mint price. And so there's 250 out there. The rest at this point, like originally we thought, oh, okay, well, FTX isn't going to happen, right? Of course not. And so we said, okay, well, Solana will be in a few months, and then we'll do that. That'll be the last chain. Then, of course, the shit got delayed, and FTX happened, and all the other stuff. So then we said, okay, now there's 750 others that we need to do something with, and we just said, let's just do blind Dutch auction, right? We got 3 one-of-ones in there. We've got a ton of rare body styles in there. Like, there's no other fair way to do it than if you own the mint pass, you get to mint for $400. If not, it's a blind Dutch auction. We'll start it off above floor, and it goes down, and whatever it mints at, it mints at.
And when are those auctions beginning?
So we don't know yet. I talked to Layer Zero again today. They said they were going into like full test net within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
And then last question for, I guess, this is your opportunity to talk to holders, talk to, once again, the overall NFT community and everything like that. What do you want them to know about Kanpai Pandas? When people think of Kanpai Pandas, what do you want them to think about?
Kanpai Pandas in general?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a, like I said, it's a membership pass. It's a unique situation where you have like this Web3 pass to Web2 utility, but at the same time, it's also about being part of a brand, right? So there's so much cool stuff that we can do with the actual NFT down the road as the brand gets bigger, right? Like say the brand does become Supreme, right? If it does become Supreme, now you've got 10,000 unique holders that have been there for the long term that now get access to all kinds of certain events. So there's a lot of cool things that we're going to be able to do with the NFT side, but our focus is building the brand, whether it be Web3 or Web2, and putting eyeballs on it. Putting eyeballs not only on the collection, but on the space and on what we're building, you know? And that's why I brought in like so many people at the top of their industries that have the opportunity to say, hey guys, this is a legit deal, to bring credibility back to Web3, because I feel like we've lost that. I feel like we really, really lost that for a long time. At least for about a year period. It was just a lot of shit. And so I want to bring that back to it. And I want to make Kanpai Pandas in the forefront of like bringing credibility back to the space and bringing like a legitimate business sense to that. And bringing fun to it, you know? But yeah.
I'm looking forward to coming to one of your events. That's what I'm getting out of this.
You should do that.
Yeah.
You should do that.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. I feel like I want to go to a UFC fight with you guys because I feel like it would just be a damn good time. And so yeah, I just and I'll have to make my way out to Vegas for one of these football games in this upcoming season. So it's gonna be an interesting season for the Raiders. So
for sure,
I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, man. Hey, I've enjoyed this. You want to drop your socials? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find us at Kanpai Pandas on Twitter, kanpaipandas.com. You can find me at, what the fuck is it? Ice Bags.
Yeah,
Ice
did you
Bags
just change your Twitter?
I did.
Yeah, I was like,
Ice Bags _
Yeah. There we go. But yeah, man, I've enjoyed this, and you know what? We should, each time we'll do we'll focus on different aspects of the project and everything like that. But man, I've enjoyed getting to know you. I'm looking forward to trying to get myself one of the Kanpai Pandas on Solana, or to be honest, I might just buy one of them on Ethereum. So
you can literally transfer it over.
There we go. Yeah, hey, that's the beautiful thing. So I can just buy one on one and transfer it over. So, yeah, man, love what you guys are doing. I think it's super cool, and I'm excited to go to one of these events because they look like a damn good time. So every time I was reading the Medium articles earlier, and was talking about all the different things you guys are doing, and just scrolling on the Twitter and everything like that, there's always something going on, and that's fun to see something where it just never stops. It's not like there's one event and that's really the only thing. It's like, man, it's nonstop. You guys are doing something. So that's cool to see. And I love that you guys have built this into a sustainable business, and excited for the future of Kanpai Pandas.
No, thank you. Appreciate you having me on. I'm excited about the future. Like, not just for pandas, for all of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got some fun times ahead of us.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Yeah, we're still having a good time in the bear market.
Look, I always say this. If I'm not fucking having fun, I'm done with it.
100%. Yeah. I literally said that to myself when I moved out to LA. I met all these people who were super successful and unhappy as hell. And I just started saying to myself, if it doesn't make me happy, if I don't enjoy it, if I'm not having fun, I'm not fucking doing it, because there's literally no point. So why are we here in this world? We're here to have a good time. We're here to, to just be happy, genuinely, truly happy, right? So if something gives me that, then I'm all in. If it doesn't, I'm out, because what's the point,
Yeah.
So, and I know that you
like that attitude.
Yeah, 100%. That's what it's all about.
I tell my wife, I'm like, if I'm not having fun, I'm done.
Yeah. Facts with everything.
I'll go find something else.
Yep, 100%. So, hey, and that's what keeps us. That's what keeps us moving in the space every day. Is just having fun and doing our thing. So, for everybody else, appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm sure we'll be running an episode back at some point. But yeah, I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to coming to one of the events soon, and we'll take it from there. So,
my man.
All right, everybody, have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you guys soon. See you guys.